Classic Anniversary, Classic Hardcore, Classic Season of Discovery, Classic The Burning Crusade, Classic Mr. Pandaria, and World of Warcraft Midnight. 6 versions of World of Warcraft. How should we determine which version to play? In today's video, we will go over which version of WoW best caters to you. Additionally, I have interviews with a player from each version explaining why they play their respected version. Let's start with World of Warcraft Midnight, which will be releasing in March, I believe. World of Warcraft retail at the minute is great for customization. It's got good graphics, really good PvE. You're able to play this for free, new player friendly, which I think is going to be quite a big key for this in comparison to the rest of the games. Blizzard's priority at the minute, as they're obviously going to push all new content, everything into this. You're able to have great customization for this. So we're talking loads of different race and class combinations, new races, new classes in comparison to the other games. There's player housing, which is going to attract a whole new fan base in itself. I'm not very good at player housing and that, but I can appreciate that this will be a really good feature for people that are interested in this kind of thing. My cons of this is that the PvP isn't very good. Game is pretty much only played at endgame. The world is so spread out. The leveling journey isn't really, I don't think is as friendly and as like a packed world, quite the same way that Classic would feel. Maybe too simplified for veteran players, potentially, as the game is having like one button rotations, things like that. So here we have an interview from a player in Midnight called Gotherick, and these are some of the things that he had to say about World of Warcraft Midnight. Gotherick said that retail was very good for casual gaming, very laid back. He's played a small portion of Classic but found that retail is better suited to his casual style. We'll always go back to Classic games for some nostalgia, but ultimately always falls back onto retail. If he was to suggest what a new player should play, he said that new players should play retail first, mostly to get a feel for the game, and then adjust to Classic if the person was interested in playing in that game. From this, we can pretty much tell that retail is a very new person friendly game, very simple to get into in comparison to its previous games. Moving on to the Classic games, I feel like it's an important note to make that before you create a character on any of these realms, is to check the realm pop room and see how active they are. I feel like with Classic games, since the player base is so diverse and so spread, it's important to know that the server you're going on is an active one, or ultimately you're going to be alone and you're probably going to end up uninstalled in the game. Moving on to short and sweet Classic Era. Classic Era is a great expansion to play as there are plenty of players playing this. I was surprised that there is still a very healthy player base to this game. I logged on to do sort of research, see if the realm was active, and when I logged into Stormwind, there was hundreds of players. Positives to Classic as well, that the world feels very alive. There's very good class identity, an active world where it feels like your abilities actually do damage. Like, the upgrades feel way better in terms of like quest rewards. The cons, however, is most of the content has been released and or finished. There are no fresh servers being released. It's been kind of been like a seasonal thing. And you are unable to play this version of WoW for free. But you could sell gold. That is kind of the problem with these Classic games, is the selling gold. Now, the interview I had with this L Power player on the Classic Era server stated that before the 2019 Classic release, he was playing retail, but as soon as the Classic Era released in 2019, he started playing and has never looked back since. He has no interest in playing TBC or hardcore WoW, as Classic Era is the perfect version of WoW. The reason he plays Classic Era as it never stops giving, and he suggests that new players or returning players should play Classic Era as you can keep playing and jump in at any time after a break and not feel left behind. Moving on to Seasons of Discovery. This is a sad one for me, as during phase 1 of Seasons of Discovery, I thought this was such a good idea. I spent loads of hours in phase 1 playing, leveling different characters. So it's unfortunate to see that the server has sadly dropped in player count, and with the no longer support of Blizzard, it ultimately will reach its graveyard soon. However, specific guilds still remain active on this server, and it's a very good, fresh perspective on Classic if you was to try it while it is still around. Now, the pros and cons of two seasons of Discovery. Let's start with the pros, however, there is a few. It was a fresh perspective on Classic, which I think they did implement some good ideas for the level 25 raids, for the runes. I don't think runes were as bad as people thought they were. There are unique armor sets in the game and unique weapons, which I think look cool as hell. Seeing that this guy on the screen here, his armor set looks amazing. It's not even in retail. I love this set. It is a beautiful set. If you can find players, there are early and mid game raids which have different level caps and I think unique items to themselves, which are really cool. However, the very obvious cons for this are low player pop, no more future support from Blizzard, and an inactive leveling world. So chances are you will be playing this game by yourself. But if you do reach endgame, there are guilds that still raiding regularly. The Doompig that I was talking to here said that his guild still raids twice a week and on weekends. So if you are into this game still, try and get into those guilds. Now, in my interview with Doompig here, this guy was so nice. But anyway, moving on. He started SOD because it was a fresh take on vanilla. He got to immerse into the world again, and he felt like that SOD is like vanilla, but with good quality of life improvements, which I think is a fair take. He disagrees that SOD is dead. He said that his guild can raid up pretty much every day of the week, and on even weekends, raid up to 4 times. The reason he doesn't play retail or TBC or anything, as he feels like the more that the game gets updated, the more that it takes from the original world. In my interview with him, he said that if he was to suggest any game, if you like power fantasy games, he would suggest retail. However, if you wanted to play vanilla, he would suggest Seasons of Discovery, as it's like vanilla but with QOL improvements. Now, moving on to classic hardcore. Positives to classic hardcore are that the world is going to feel way more challenging and way more immersive. Everything, especially solo self-found, crafting everything, no auction house, having to work solely with like people who you meet across the world, will be a very fresh feeling. During my interview with Rager THC, I asked him why does he play hardcore. He said that he finds hardcore really fun to play. He got into it through a friend and has been playing it for about a year. He occasionally plays Midnight, however, it isn't really as time consuming as hardcore, as he spends all his time on hardcore raiding. He plays a little bit of Burning Crusade, however, spends mostly all his time on Classic. If he would suggest any game to a new or returning player, he said he would suggest Retail as it's the easiest to get into and has the most longevity. He wouldn't suggest Classic era to new players due to its complex nature. Mr. Pandaria Classic. The OG game for me. Probably one of the best expansions ever to exist. I'll promise you that is the case. My personal experience with this is that this is a game I started. I thought I would play Mr. Pandaria more. Unfortunately, we can be blinded by nostalgia. I do like playing Mr. Pandaria for 2v2, 3v3, any PvP. But the servers ain't looking the healthiest, unfortunately, people. Despite the class design, I think, being meta, the best that it's ever been. Let's go on to our interview with Dare I even? I don't know. My interview with Dariven. He said that he's been playing MOP since release. He has been addicted to MOP due to nostalgia of 2012 to 2014. Once the Mr. Pandaria cycle finishes, he will return to retail. Besides that, he doesn't have any interest in TBC hardcore due to their old gameplay. Now, when I think of old, I do think of games before this. However, this game is 14 years old. That's crazy. Anyway, he also says that he would suggest retail. It is very beginner friendly, so a common game we have here. Now, moving on to the recent re-release of TBC Classic. I actually think this is a really good expansion. And the first time it's released, I actually didn't play it too much until right at the very end. My leveling pace is mega slow, however, I am going to try and get up to 70 and play some more content on this. I interviewed this lovely Draenei called Vaskin. Vaxin said that TBC is his favourite expansion as he prefers the horizontal progression. Every raid is relevant in the whole expansion, doesn't really enjoy how Disney retail is, and would probably enjoy Classic more if it wasn't elitist. When I asked what would he recommend to a new player or a returning player, he stated that if you like the leveling journey, that you should try playing Classic, or if you prefer a good endgame, you should try Retail. So there we have it. Retail getting a majority vote for what you should play if you are new, but a strong passion for the Classic games by our veteran players. I really appreciate everyone that helped out with the interview. I'd like to continue making WoW content in the future, however, so if that's something you are interested in, then feel free to subscribe. But after that, please take care